Welcome. Today's shiur is going to be short because it's a Friday and I want everybody to be busy preparing for Shabbos, and we should be. Malchus Dovid HaNitzchis, the everlasting kingship of kingdom of David. V'hinei, and behold, even though that throughout the generations the Jews had different forms of behaving and different directions and kings, from Moshe Rabbeinu and Yehoshua, starting from Moshe Rabbeinu and Yehoshua, shechazal misyachsim aleim, that the Chazal, they basically consider them in a very clear fashion as kings, even though they weren't defined by Torah and by Navi as kings. And it came Malchus Shaul, and then after you have Shaul HaMelech, Mesiapes, all of them Moshe Melech, that the Torah clearly refers to him as king. Nevertheless, the main concept of kingship in the Yidden and Mesiachos of Dovid HaMelech, it's specifically related to and given to David and Shlomo. And like we said before, Giluy that specifically through them, the Yidden reached a situation of tranquility and complete rulership and the building of the Beis Hamikdash. And for them, Hashem promised everlasting kingship over the Yidden. And like it was promised to David, that even if my children will distance themselves from Torah and from my laws, they will go away from. They won't go in the ways of my laws. But for the David, since David was anointed, he merited with the crown, the crown of kingship. Malchus has got him ad elam, and the kingship is for him and his children, the male children, and forever. There's no Jewish king besides from the kingdom of David and from the seed of Shlomo. This is also understood with regards to the deeper meaning of the kingship of the Jews. That the king down here works as similar to connected to the king above. That this is proper. This concept fits with David and his descendants, specifically with them. After the days of David and Shlomo, the kingship was divided, and the majority of the tribes of the Yidden removed themselves from the house of David. This was through prophecy from Hashem. Through he prophesied about Yeravam ben Nevat that they will take his kingship. And like the words of the Rambam and the continuation, the concept that a prophet that appoints a king from the rest of the tribes, from the rest of the Yidden, he's a king, and all the mitzvahs, all the commands that are connected to a king, you can behave with him. The Rambam adds, and he writes, even then, even when you have he really has the attribute of kingship because the prophets appointed him. Nevertheless, the Iker HaMalchus is David's, the main kingship. Okay, move on. He's not talking about the Iker in numbers, in quantity. When the kingship was divided, only a minority stayed with David, with the house of David. Like the Rebbe explains, that he's talking about that when the Rambam says Iker HaMalchus, he's talking about in quality. That the source and the essence of Melucha, of kingship, this exaltedness and this elevation of the soul is Beis Dovid Dovad, is only for the house of David. Over there, and in a similar vein, the Rambam the Rebbe explains the expression of Keser Malchus, the crown of the kingship, that the Rambam speaks about, that Dovid HaMelech merited. The intent of Keser Malchus, the crown, is speaking about the soulful elevation that is in the nature of the king, and it goes into the nature of Dovid HaMelech and to his descendants forever. But with regards to the kings of the Yidden, they only have the external details of the king, of the kingship, that they practically were given permission to lead the nation. But they do not have the deeper, essential attribute of exaltedness that a true king has. Just like it's mitzad the king, similarly with regards to the nation. Even after the kingdom was divided, even the 10 tribes that were under the rulership of other kings, the kingdom of Israel, even truthfully, they are always connected in a deep, soulful way, essential way to the singular kingdom of the house of David. And only externally and practically, they ended up being connecting themselves to other kings. This is what it means, that the main fundamental kingship is with David. With the internal, essential connection with the nation to a king, is constantly only for the house of David. This and furthermore, that we're promised that this situation, this circumstance of the division of the kingdom is only limited in time. And at the end of the day, the complete kingship, the complete kingdom will return to the house of David. Davidic dynasty. Like the words of the Rambam in the continuation, Beis Dovid the kings from the house of David, from the Davidic dynasty, will stand forever. But if there's a king that will come from any other tribes, the kingship will be ceased from his house. What's the reason? Because Hashem's kingship over the Yidden is everlasting, without any change. Like it says, they are servants to me. Wherever it says li to me, it is unmovable forever. Meaning that's what it is. And therefore, Malchus David, being that the kingdom of the Davidic dynasty is the seat of Hashem's kingship, Hashem's throne over the Yidden, it is an everlasting kingship that there's no change. The Amnam, however, it's possible to have temporary changes in the revelation and the spreading of the kingship over the nation. But in the essential definition of kingship, it is not possible to have this change. I think we'll end here because we want to keep this shiur short and to the point. Unless, you know what? Let's do it a little more. Malchus Hashem is Bana Golus, the kingship of Hashem in the time of Golus. In the time of exile, the kingdom from the kingship from the house of David was nullified, and the Yidden were taken to be subjugated to the other kings, to the other nations. Now, according to what we said before, move on, it's understood that besides for the physical hardship that there is with being subjugated to foreign kings, even in a spiritual level, the subjugation to other kings is in contradiction to Hashem's kingship. And in two ways. Aleph, bepashtus, simply, the subjugation does not allow the Yidden, the Jews, to be busy with Torah and mitzvahs properly. Over Pratim specifically, but again, the mitzvahs that should have based on Mikdash, and specifically with regards to the mitzvahs that are connected to the Beis HaMikdash and the service in the Beis HaMikdash. And all the mitzvahs that are connected with living and dwelling in Eretz Yisrael, it's not possible to fulfill them. And these things that we're saying is even related to the Jews that are living in Eretz Yisrael. Because there are many mitzvahs that are dependent on all the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. And when the Yidden are not in their land, so even those Jews that are living in Eretz Yisrael, they cannot fulfill these mitzvahs. So that's simply Pashat, very, very simple. The reason why it's a contradiction and it's a problem is because you can't do it, you can't fulfill Torah mitzvahs properly. And then you have been more than this. That's number two. Even in a situation where there's no decrees on the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, and the Yidden are free to fulfill mitzvahs as they wish. And even if there will be a case where the nations of the world are allowing the Jews to build the Beis HaMikdash and to live and dwell in the land. Like by the second Beis HaMikdash, the Malchus from the Persian king allowed the Jews to return to Eretz Yisrael and to build the Beis HaMikdash. The essential fact that the Yidden are subjugated to a strange foreign king, that he's not expressing Hashem's kingship. This is the contradictory, this is opposite of the true essential existence of the Yidden. The true king of the Yidden is Hashem by himself. And what the truth, Hashem is the king of us, even in time of exile. The obligation to fulfill mitzvahs of the Torah is everlasting. Without change, even in the time of Golus. And it's a complete prophecy in Yechezkel that the Yidden thought that in the time of Golus they are as a slave that was sold to its master. And they thought that they would be exempt from fulfilling mitzvahs. And the prophet responded to them, Asher atem oimim niye kegoyim kimishpachos ha'aratzis l'sheres eitz ve'aven chai ani nu Hashem alekeichem im loy biyad chazaka v'zir netuya v'chem shvucha emlech aleichem. You guys think that that you could say that we'll be like the nations and all, we'll basically, we'll integrate ourselves. Chai ani nu Hashem, on my life, says Hashem. And this, that there's an obligation, a Jewish obligation to behave according to the laws of the nature of the Dina de Malchus Dina. This is only with regards to money matters and things that are mundane. And anything that has to do with Torah and mitzvahs, the nations of the world have no permission over have no authority over the Yidden. And their decrees have no obligatory implications. The famous Lashon, only our bodies are in Golus, and subjugated to the kings. Like also, when our souls didn't go into exile, and our souls are not given over in subjugation. What has to do with our Judaism, Torah, mitzvahs, and minhagei Yisrael, which is the Torah, the mitzvahs, and the minhagim. There's no authority besides Hashem. Okay, Sefer Chazal, like the story, Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Babel, when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, Hoda, the Hanani, Mishael, Azariah, and it told Hanani, Mishael, Azariah, the Shach was, let's tell him to bow down to an idol. They said to him, "B'meisim of Arnunis, V'zimios of Glilios, as Melech Aleinu." But this that you're telling us, Nebuchadnezzar asked, yeah, I'm not translation to that, sorry. Let's go deeper. Even in that they was given permission to the nations of the world to rule over the Yidden with regards to regular matters. This is only in a rulership against the permission of the Jews, against the will. Okay, what's the difference between rulership, dictatorship, I guess, and kingship? A dictator and a ruler can be practically something that is against your will, that forces you. And kingship is an internal connection between the nation and the king that is specifically willingly. That his kingship they willingly accepted upon themselves. That in times of Golus it says on it, it's only a dictatorship, a rulership. Because mitzad us, by ourselves, we return and we announce that we only have one king, and that is Hashem. We do not want the yoke of foreigners. Our desire is to only have Hashem as our king. Nevertheless, practically, it's not recognizable Hashem's kingship over the Yidden. So all of this that we're saying about, there's the obligation, all these things, practically, the Jews are, we are in the subjugation of foreign kings. They have the ability to force us to not fulfill the commands of Hashem, of the Atah, to the point that a Jew in this situation can have the thought that this is the true reality, this is the true situation and the truth. This is how it's supposed to be. And his true identity is that he is a citizen of this country. And he's removing himself, he's separating himself from the connection to the nation of Hashem, Hashem's nation. Just like this is in Hashem's kingship, the kingship of the heavens, the same thing is regarding to the kingship of David. Even in the kingship of David, it says, and then it says, like we said, at any time it says li, it means forever. Even in the time where the kingdom was divided, and there was kings that were not from the descendants of David. Even then, the true kingship is from the house of David. And even more so, in the Golus, in the time of exile. That were Pashit, we're in a very bad situation. This is only practically. This is how it is. But that we have to fulfill the directives of the nation of the king, the foreign kings. But we do not give ourselves over. We do not nullify ourselves to their kingship. Our deep desire is tamid, constantly b'tzipiyah, the expectation of Chazar's Malchus David Yeshna, when the kingship of David will return to its former glory. Okay, and like the establishment of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, to pray, every single Jew to pray 3 times a day, as Tzemach David Avdecha Meir Tatzmiach, Obeberchas HaMazain, and in benching Rachem Hashem Alekenu Al Malchus Beis Dovid Mishichecha, Ubechol Shabbos Beberchas Haftarah, and every single Shabbos when we're reading the Haftarah, the Bracha, Samchenu Hashem Alekenu B'Malchus Beis Dovid Mishichecha Al Kisoy Loyesh Zar V'Lo Yinchalu Oy Dachirim Es Kevoidai. Well, Derech Zan, similarly between Yom Naraim, in the prayers that we say in the high holidays. Because of Rambam, and that's where the Rambam writes, Kanal Ein Melech Yisrael Elam Beis Dovid Shleimah. There's no king for the Jews, only from the house of the house of Dovid HaMelech and from the descendants of Shleimah. These words were written in the deepest, darkest times of Golus. More than 1,500 years after the kingship of David was done, yeah. Even then it was said in a very simple way. The Yeshayda and very clear. Take it with all the strength. There's no king for the Yidden except from the house of David. Like I said before, but this is all within the internal concept of kingship. But practically and in a revealed way, we see that there are other kings over the Jews. So we are going to on Sunday, Hashem, we are going to speak about Melech HaMoshiach and how this is all going to change. Beis Hashem Baruch. Wishing everybody a good Shabbos. It should be a Yom Shekol Shabbos with the coming of with the full revelation of Melech HaMoshiach, the Rebbe Melech HaMoshiach in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi with all the Yidden together. Yechi Adinenu Merina v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMoshiach v'Elam V'Ad. Long live our Master, our Rebbe, King Mashiach, forever and ever.